Let's take a few moments to settle in, to arrive into the space. So find your meditation posture. Could be sitting, standing, lying down, in a chair, on the ground. Any position that's comfortable for you. To take a few moments and take a few deep breaths. And as you notice the in-breath and the out-breath, notice the pause between the two. We call it the stamba, the pause that happens between the inhale and exhale and between the exhale and inhale. So as you inhale, notice that peak of the mountain at the very top. See if there's a small little plateau. And as you exhale and go down into the valley, see again if there's a small pause at the bottom of the exhale. And as you continue to notice perhaps new qualities of the breath, notice how the in breath creates a sense of fullness, perhaps wholeness or aliveness. And what the exhale might mean to you, this letting go, surrender, or dying breath, the emptying. So as you inhale, notice the filling. And as you exhale, notice the emptying. And as we notice the breath, the qualities of the breath, see if you can also notice the noticer, the quality of your awareness that is aware of the breath. You might call it the witness, the observer, the Purusha or Atman, consciousness, soul, spirit. Or you might not call it any word at all. And if your eyes have been closed this entire time, what's often nice is rather than immediately open and direct your eyes and attention to the talk, is take a look around and see if you can find something in your environment that is pleasing to the eyes, something that brings a little joy or happiness or simply contentment, So often when I open my eyes after meditation, I see if there's perhaps a leaf or a flower, or the light is cascading through the trees onto the floor or into the window in a certain way, or if there's anything in your environment that brings a certain contentment and peace to the mind. Hmm. So, hello, welcome, good afternoon, namaste. My name is Zach. Welcome to a little Dharma talk that I like to call Living from the Heart, about this 18-inch spiritual journey, which can sometimes take many lifetimes, simply traveling from up here down to here. So thanks of you for those of you joining me in the room. Thanks to those of you joining me on Zoom. And thanks to those of you listening to the recording afterward. I like to start with a poem of my own as a segue into today's topic. We'll finish with a short meditation and then have some time at the end for question and answer to see if anything came up. And today's poem is called The Illusion of Separation. It's a very short one, so blink and you'll miss it. This poem goes, even though you are alone, you are not alone. Even though you are alone, you are not alone. So our topic for today is what I like to call the unification of duality. Or you might think of it as a recognition of opposites. And there's a quote by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj that I really love and I always return back to. And it goes, love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. And between the two, my life flows. I'll say that again. Love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. And between the two, my life flows. And if you want a little context into Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he became quite well known for his work, I Am That. And he was a relatively well-known Advaita Vedanta teacher. Whenever you hear the word Advaita, think non-dual. So dwi is the Sanskrit for two. And whenever there's an A in front of a Sanskrit word, it means the opposite. So Vedas would be knowledge. Avidya would be ignorance. Dvi is two, and Advaita or Advaita is not two. But we don't say the word not two, we say non-dual. And there's a big distinction between not two or non-dual and what you might label as oneness. And that's its own talk in of itself. But we think about this idea, I am that, and why he would say that. And the basic idea is that anytime you identify as any particular thing, you are limiting yourself. It is not your true essence. Your true essence goes beyond word and concepts. So the only thing you could possibly say is, I am that which goes beyond words, beyond thought, beyond any conceptual thinking. So to say that you are everything is correct in a certain way, and to say that you are nothing is also correct in a certain way. And between these two ideas and between these two dualities, our life flows. So love says you are everything. And, sometimes we even want to hear that from our partners. Who doesn't want to hear, you are everything to me? And I love the practice that is known as the mantra of intimacy. And it's simply this too, this too. It's a matter of saying yes to everything. So one of the things that the Buddha taught is that there is pain in this life, but it's our resistance to said pain that causes suffering. Pain times resistance equals suffering. And if you know math, anything times 0 equals 0. So pain times no resistance equals no suffering. So this too is a way of welcoming, is a way of releasing resistance. And it's a mantra you can apply in your meditation practice. As you notice, anxiety, this too, pain, regrets, this too, this belongs, this is welcome. All aspects of our experience can be welcomed in. But when we think about our identity, we can notice things and say, yeah, this is also me. This is also me. This is also me. This is known as the via positiva, as opposed to the via negativa, the positive path, as opposed to the negative path. So when you do kind of sit and notice the breath as it comes in and out. You notice, yes, I am my breath. I am my heart. I am my thoughts. I am my body. But where did this breath come from? It came from the trees. I am the trees. Where did the trees come from? The trees came from the union of the sun and the earth. I am the sun and the earth. And eventually, your identity gets expansive and expansive and more expansive to finally you find yourself identifying with everything, recognizing that you are everything. Did anyone ever tell you this, that you are everything? So as Rumi would put it, we're not a tiny drop in an endless ocean. We are the entire ocean within the drop. And this is the path of love. This is the path of this too, this too, this belongs, this belongs. And we can also take the totally opposite path. We can have the path, if love is the path of yes, wisdom, you might say, is the path of no. So you could also sit in meditation and notice your thoughts and recognize that you are not your thoughts. You don't have to believe everything that you think in your meditation practice. As you notice your emotions, you can notice you are much more than your emotions. You are much more than your past. This is the process known as neti neti, which is quite the opposite. Neti neti means not this, not this. So just as like a sculptor finds the sculpture within the marble by chipping away everything that is not the sculpture, this is also a way of cultivating our own inner identity by chipping away at everything that is not us in order to see what is left. So this is what you find in many spiritual circles, that there are few things as spiritual as nothing, no thing at all. In fact, when I asked my wife what she wanted for her birthday, she said that nothing would make her happier than a diamond necklace. So I got her nothing. Or another story, a monk opens up a present and there's nothing inside. So what does he say? Nothing, just what I've always wanted. Even nothing can be a gift. So this is the via negativa, not this, not this. So you'll probably notice a lot of spiritual practices do involve a clearing, do involve a cleansing, do involve a removal. I even love the ritual of entering into the yoga space, the meditation space. And what do? You put your belongings aside. You take your shoes off, you put it away. You take your bag off, you put it away. Whatever it is that you use to carry yourself out throughout the world, you can set it aside to discover what is always you as we release what is temporarily us. So even Meister Eckhart says that nothing in the universe resembles God so much as silence. So silence is a wonderful spiritual practice. Fasting is another spiritual practice. Releasing all attachments to material pleasure through the consumption of food. All of these things are ways of clearing. Even Rumi likened the human body as a flute. And if you want beautiful music to come through your body, you have to remove the gunk and the junk. So fasting is one way of clearing out your instrument to allow other energies and divine energies to flow through you, and for sweet music to emanate from your experience. So there is a clearing. Another mantra that you might try, I got this from James Finley, and because he has a podcast on mysticism that I really enjoy. And a lot of times he'll end his talks with, "Be still and know I am God." But then he takes it away, takes it away. "Be still and know I am. Be still and know I. Be still and know. Be still. Be." And you're just taking away and taking away until you get to the fundamental essence of it all, just beingness. So this is our path, this sort of skirting between these two seemingly separate realities. We can discover who we are by identifying with everything, and we can also discover who we are by identifying with nothing at all. So when we think about this practice of yoga, you've probably heard that yoga means union. This is certainly one interpretation. But if we take it back just one step, we can think of yoga as meaning to link together or to join together. So obviously the state of joining, we could say, is union. But yoga is a matter of linking together, just like you would link together two ends of your belt buckle. Even in the sacred text, this word yoga is used simply as a verb to mean any sort of linkage that we might bring into our life. And this is important because I find there are many different interpretations of what exactly it is that we are connecting together, what exactly we are yoking together in our practice. Now, traditionally, in the sacred texts, in, say, the Vedas, so you already learned your vocabulary word for today. Vedas means knowledge. And in the Vedas, there's a metaphor for the human experience where you imagine a carriage and then horses drawing the carriage. And in this metaphor, the horses are your senses. The reins that connect the chariot driver to the horses is known as your intellect, which is just one part of your mind. And then the driver of the chariot is your ahankara, your ego. And then the rider in the carriage is known as the atman, which you might call the soul or the witness. Now, by and large, yoga really just meant restraining your horses. It really just meant yoking your horses to your carriage. In other words, the common human experience is to run after one sensory pleasure to the other sensory pleasure to the other sensory pleasure. In this realm of hungry growth, we're never fully satisfied. We always just want to go from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And yoga is a matter of disciplining the senses. It is a matter of restraining the horses, not to chase after every single thing that you find, but to stay focused on your intention and to go in the direction that you want to go. So traditionally, that's all it meant. You want to yoke your horses to your carriage. So the Zen poet Ryokan wrote this: "If you want to find the meaning, stop chasing after so many things." Okay. If you want to find the meaning, stop chasing after so many things. That's one of the things that we are here to do, to stop chasing after things and to notice what happens if we just sit and be still. But of course, yoga has evolved. So, what exactly we are connecting or unifying with has also changed throughout time. And I find talking to people who've done yoga for a while is it will mean different things at different times in your life. A lot of people come to yoga at the beginning to cultivate a deeper connection to their bodies. And this is great because most people are living from the shoulders up, lost in thought, caught up in their own mind and ruminative thinking, and totally disembodied from the aliveness that we can experience by unifying body and mind. But of course, that can also be just one step because we can also unify body, mind, and soul, or body, mind, and spirit. And later on in the yogic text, yoga did evolve to be more of a union of your individual localized consciousness with a more universal or divine or ultimate reality or ultimate consciousness, what you might have heard of as Atman and Brahman. But we can also think of yoga to mean unification of opposites. So you might have heard the etymology that hatha, so we have hatha yoga, the ha means sun and tha means moon. And the practice of hatha yoga is unifying the solar and lunar energies of our experience. So in Kundalini yoga, we have a central channel, the Sushumna Nadi, and then we have two solar and lunar channels that spiral around each other like the staff on the medicine symbol. One side is the solar side, and the other side is the lunar side. So one way that we unite these energies is by alternate nostril breathing. It's very simple. Of course, if you come to an asana class, we do right side, left side, right side, left side. So we're still unifying opposites. We're still unifying differing parts of our experience. Now, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, however, because most scholars do not think that hatha means sun and moon. This is a bit of a made up etymology. That sounds nice. Because when you actually look at the history of this word, it actually means force. So sun usually comes from Syria and moon usually comes from Chandra, at least in Sanskrit. And hatha is actually means force, and it kind of developed around the 15th, 16th centuries. And it was a very forceful practice. So that was the origin of our modern physical asana. It's a very, maybe you noticed, it's a very forceful and physical practice. But I still think we can kind of unite these two ideas and recognize that unification of opposites might require some effort, might require some force. These are opposites for a reason. They like being separate. So it's going to take some efforts, some vigorous breathing exercises, and vigorous physical postures in order to unify these separate parts of our nervous system. There's a poem called Did I Miss Anything by Tom Wayman, who's a teacher, right? So this poem goes, questions frequently asked by students after missing a class is, did I miss anything? Nothing. We realized when you weren't here, we sat with our hands folded on our desks in silence for 2 full hours. Everything. I gave an exam worth 40% of the grade for this term and assigned some reading due today, on which I'm about to hand out a quiz worth 50% of your grade. Nothing. None of the content of this course has value or meaning. Take off as many days as you like. Any activities we undertake as a class, I assure you, will not matter either to you or me and are fully without purpose. Everything. A few minutes after we began last time, a shaft of light descended, and an angel or other heavenly being appeared and revealed to us what each woman or man must do to attain divine wisdom in this life and the hereafter. This is the last time the class will meet before we disperse to bring this good news to all people on earth. Nothing. When you are not present, how could something significant occur? Everything. Contained in this classroom is a microcosm of human existence, assembled for you to query and examine and ponder. This is not the only such place an opportunity has been gathered, but it is one place. And you weren't here. I love that last line. You weren't here. This is something we practice. Present. It's like those raffle tickets. You must be present to win. So love tells us we are everything. Wisdom tells us we are nothing. And between the two, our life flows. There's a few ways we can think about these two understandings, these two levels of awareness. And a major one is that we should never get attached to any particular extreme. We're here to practice non-attachment, actually. There's a famous quote from the Buddha. Famous quote from the Buddha. When I first heard this, I thought it was one of those fake Buddha quotes, but it's actually true. And he said, people with strong opinions just go around bothering other people. And part of our task is to not get so caught up in our rigid views and beliefs and opinions. So in the Dhammapada, it says, let go of what has come and let go of what is ahead, and let go of the in-between. With a heart that takes hold nowhere, you will arrive at the place beyond suffering. So we are here to let go. Han Shan, Zen poet, wrote, I gaze on myself in the stream's emerald flow, or sit on a boulder by a cliff. My mind, a lonely cloud, leans on nothing, needs nothing from the world and its endless events. So you might have heard this phrase, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And there's always a deeper meaning. And when you kind of get into the history of some of these stories, there's always a little bit more to be gained. Because this succinct phrase is a summary of a conversation. And a lot of Buddhist teachings, or Dharma, as you might call it, is a conversation, always between student and teacher. A lot of the times it's the student saying, I am suffering, and the teacher offering some solution to their suffering. So the conversation in general goes like this. Master, what happens? No, Master, what do I need to do to attain enlightenment? He says, chop wood, carry water. Master, what do I do after enlightenment? Chop wood, carry water. Now, that might seem like the same story, but this is a very common thing that you'll find in this student-teacher conversation in the Buddhist Dharma, which is essentially, if you ask your teacher about some big, lofty, cosmological thing or question, he's going to give you a down-to-earth answer. If you ask a down-to-earth question, you're going to get a vast metaphysical answer. So you might have also heard that other conversation where the student goes to his teacher and he says, what happens after we die? The teacher says, I don't know. He says, what? I thought you're supposedly enlightened. And the teacher, I thought you're supposedly an enlightened monk. And the teacher says, I am, but not a dead one. And there's some humor to it, but you can see if you ask something simple, you're going to get something extravagant. If you're going to ask something extravagant, you're going to get something simple. And this is a teaching. Wherever you want to hold on to for certainty and stability and security, you need to let go of it. So another story, which I'll shorten a little bit because it's fairly long, but there is a famous monk by the name of Bodhidharma who is largely attributed to having brought Buddhism to China. And in this, one of his disciples really, really wants to learn and really, really wants to learn. And eventually, this guy named Huike finally gets a chance to speak to Bodhidharma directly. And he says, my mind is so anxious. Please pacify it. To which Bodhidharma replied, bring me your mind and I will pacify it. And Huike says, although I've sought it, I cannot find it. And Bodhidharma then says, there, I have pacified it for you. Yes, you ask about something abstract like the mind. Well, point to me where your mind is. And I think about this idea a lot, even in meditation, or spiritual practice, we sometimes say that spiritual practice is like jumping out of an airplane, suddenly realizing you have no parachute, but then you realize there is no ground, and then you realize that no one jumped. The whole point being that there is no ground to stand on. If we say, I am everything, you are correct to a point. If you say that you are nothing, you are correct to a point. And this gets me into a little bit of trouble, I find, because I do sometimes lead yoga teacher trainings. And most of these students come from the West, and they're used to having a certain authority figure be the teacher to tell them exactly what they need to know, for the test. And I'm often like, well, there's no right or wrong way to teach yoga. You could do this for the following reasons, and you could do this for the following reasons. And then a student says, but can I do this? And I say, sure, why not? People do not like this. My students want to know the thing. They want to know exactly what they are supposed to do. And they don't like not having that ground to stand on. And this is the difference between spiritual teachings and perhaps what we learned in school. We learned about facts when spiritual teachings are about truth. So I sometimes think about that because to me, a good teacher is one that sits up straight and is able to project so that everyone in the room can hear them and perhaps connects with each student in the room with eye contact or a certain particular way, and is generally a good public speaker. But I remember one of my teachers in Thailand, as he would speak, his eyes would close and close and close, that you'd almost think he was falling asleep as he was speaking. And he would kind of lounge in his chair and have his chin tucked under. And like whenever he talked, it almost was like the words never even left his mouth. And he would just be like, when Bodhidharma came to China, the monks were lazy. So he taught them Kung Fu. And all the students, they were raptured. Because what do you have to do when you listen to somebody speaking so softly? You got to lean in. You got to be quiet. Shh, he's talking. We have to listen in. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, as one public speaker could be loud and project, but another one who might speak so quietly, it requires everyone to be fully present to listen to each word that they're saying. So I also find that sometimes in yoga, I get attached to a certain alignment. Oh, you know what? Heel to heel alignment. We absolutely need heel to heel alignment in Warrior 2. And then I take a class and the teacher's like heel to arch alignment. And I take that and I'm like, that works. That works too. And then I took a teacher and it was heel to toe alignment. I was like, no way. But then I did it and it worked. It always works. So in another famous Buddhist dialogue, Zen master Tozan was asked by one of his teachers, what is the Buddha? What do you think he said? 3 pounds of flax. Okay. Like flaxseed, right? So there are many different interpretations to this story. 3 pounds of flax, right? And so some scholars are like, oh, what flax was another word for hemp. This is a mistranslation of the Japanese text. And hemp is what the monks spin into robes. And this takes 3 pounds of cotton hemp to make a robe. And he's saying the Buddha makes up everything. Or others say, it takes it's some sort of trinity that he's referencing. And as you've probably noticed, if you ask something big, you're going to get something right here, right now. So even when Ramana Maharshi was asked if yoga can give you knowledge of your previous lives, and it's true, when you get into the yogic texts, you do learn all about the superpowers, all about the siddhis, S-I-D-D-H-I-S, or manifestations. You can get small, you can get large, you can teleport, you can telekinesis, the whole shebang. But what did Ramana Maharshi said? He said to the question, does yoga give you knowledge of your previous lives? He said, do you have knowledge of your current life? Yes. It's so easy to think, oh, what magic powers I can create. Are you in touch with this life right here, right now? So we're not here to cling to any particular side. And this is why so many Zen stories they're just funny. And they're funny because we, at the end, realize none of what was said earlier really matters. We just finally let go, right? I've been wanting to say this joke in my classes, and I was like, how am I going to fit this into a yoga theme? And it goes, last night, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How it got into my pajamas, I'll never know. And you get it? And I haven't figured out how to theme it around a yoga class, but I just love it because you hear it and you're like, this sounds like really serious when you're shooting elephants over here. And then you're like, okay, it's just a story. And the mind finally releases itself. So practice meditation like you go to the toilet. Just let go. Mhm. As Suzuki Roshi says, life is like setting off into the ocean for a wonderful adventure. And then at one point, your boat sinks. This is life. Yes. So one way to think about love telling us that we're everything and wisdom telling us we're nothing is that we're not here to cling on to any particular extreme. And we see how much violence and separation is done in the world by people firmly entrenched in their own views, beliefs, and opinions. But another way we can think about these two phrases or think about what it might mean for our life to flow in between them is that we can acknowledge two seemingly contradictory truths at the same time. Another way to think of it as you can exist on multiple planes simultaneously. So sometimes I find spiritual practice is a lot like the discovery of light. That is light a particle or is it a wave? The answer is both and neither. So are you human? Are you divine? I might say both and neither. So Zen Master Dogen says, delusion is seeing all things from the perspective of self. Enlightenment is seeing the self from the perspective of the myriad things of the universe. So when you think about, what is this reality? Well, you have a particular perspective. And what is it like to see the world from other perspectives? We can also take a more universal kind of approach and think about when we think about what is reality or what is real or what is true. Well, when you look at the earth, and when you look at an ocean, and when you look at a water molecule, these are all different levels of awareness, and they're all true in the same way. So back in the day, for example, when we had like newspapers that was printed text, do you ever take a little microscope and look at the newspaper? And if you looked really closely at the letters, you'll see it's all made up of individual dots. That's all it is. So at a certain level of awareness, all it is dots. At a certain other level of awareness, it is text and meaning. And enlightenment is seeing the self from the perspective of the myriad of things in the universe. Chogyam Trungpa put it this way: hold the sadness and pain of samsara in your heart, and at the same time, the power and vision of the great eastern sun. Then the warrior can make a proper cup of tea. You might have also heard the phrase, praise Allah, which means God, and tie your camel to the post. Yes, do we get the double meaning? Yes, we can believe in perhaps some higher order, that there is some higher order to the universe, but are we only going to believe in that? Are we going to forget about our day-to-day activities that still need to be done? We still tie our camel to the post. So you do sometimes see this in yoga. You might think of it in form as the chakra system. Some people are all crown chakra. Their head is just 100% in the clouds. And these folks need to drop down to ground level. Meanwhile, others are all root chakra, taking things literally just as they mean and not getting in touch with this great mystery, the great divine that is all around us. So, another way that we can think about things existing on multiple planes simultaneously is that essentially everything contains its opposite. So, of course, a symbol that you've probably seen is the yin yang symbol, which is a wonderful representation of this unification of opposites. Within the black, there's a little bit of white, and within the white, there's a little bit of black. So these things are not opposites. You might say that they are complements. So you might say that you cannot have one without the other and that they are interdependent. So, for example, one exercise I sometimes do during trainings is I'll have students write down 3 strengths that you have. And they write down 3 strengths, and then I have them write down 3 weaknesses that they have. So they write down 3 weaknesses. And then I'm like, okay, look back at your strengths columns. At what point in your life is your strength also a weakness? At what point is your weakness also a strength? Right. And suddenly people see that anything that exists is going to cast a shadow. Any shadow is going to have some light aspect to it. So maybe you consider, for example, a strength of yours that you are a free spirit, right? You just go wherever the wind blows. Well, that's going to have a shadow side. It might manifest as being afraid of commitment, being afraid of stability, not wanting to feel nailed down in any way. So, as we are unifying our opposites, we can even say that things that we label as all good all the time have some shadow element to it. And at the same time, our weaknesses, such as being told that we're too sensitive, for example, can also be seen as wonderful strengths. So, there's a story. Once upon a time in ancient China, there was a young monk who drew water from the well and carried it back to the temple every day. The young monk carried 2 buckets of water slung on a bamboo pole across his shoulders. One of the buckets was perfect, while the other one was a leaky bucket with a few holes on the side. So every time the young monk filled up the 2 buckets and got back to the temple, the leaky bucket would be half empty as water sprinkled through the holes onto the sides. The leaky bucket is personified a little bit here. The leaky bucket was sad that it was imperfect and water was leaking from its sides. One day, on the way to the well, the leaky bucket plucked up enough courage and spoke with the young monk with an apologetic tone. Master, I am sorry that I am imperfect and could not keep the water from sprinkling through the holes on my sides. The young monk smiled slightly and nodded his head knowingly, silently in acknowledgement. And on the way back to the temple, the monk said to the leaky bucket, look at the side of the road where the perfect bucket has passed over. It is barren. Not even a blade of grass grows there. Pointing to the blooming flowers on the other side of the road, the young monk said to the leaky bucket, see these beautiful flowers? These are here only because of the water you sprinkled on them every day. They owe their existence to you, and we are able to enjoy these beautiful flowers only because of you. Your imperfection has brought benefits to people all around you. So another phrase that you might have heard is no mud, no lotus. When you find lotus flowers in the wild, you will find that they grow in shallow ponds. And within the muck and the mud, the seed grows, it reaches the tip of the water, and then it blooms into a beautiful sight. The lotus flower, in this case, tends to represent enlightenment and our capacity to awaken. And the mud, in this case, represents pain and suffering and darkness. And we say you cannot have the light without the dark. You cannot have your awakening without pain and suffering. Another way to put it is that pain and suffering in your life must be digested. It must be synthesized. It must be integrated. And we call spiritual bypassing the tendency to want to completely avoid, bypass the necessary emotional work that needs to be done, hoping that we can just go straight to the light and adopt certain spiritual ideas without the necessary muddy and mucky work that it is that we need to do. But if we also think about this basic idea that you cannot have mud without the lotus, can we even say that they are separate? Is the lotus any different than the mud if you cannot have one without the other? So things exist, and they do not. You are alone, and you are not alone. So even another common story of the Theravadan monk Ajahn Chah, he takes a glass of water and says, "Do you see this glass of water? It shines, light shines through it perfectly. It holds my water well. When I tap the glass, it has a nice ring to it. But to me, the glass is already broken." He recognizes that there is no inherent glassness, that the glass is impermanent, like everything else. It has arises to given a certain causes and conditions, and those causes and conditions will cease to exist. So just as existence and non-existence, or being and non-being, or life and death, black and white, these are all interdependent. These are all two sides of the same coin. And we have to acknowledge these two planes of existence simultaneously. So it's not easy. You might call it a paradox. And I find, particularly with English, there's a hard time. We do have a hard time conceptualizing paradox, which is why Zen teachings mostly come from Japan, and their language does allow much more possibility to kind of integrate paradoxical understandings of the world. But as Jung would say, if it's not paradoxical, it's not true. So another story, hopefully you're getting a little sense of why this is always in dialogue. So a Zen teacher says to his student, "To end suffering, you must touch the world of no birth and no death." His student asked, "Where is the world of no birth and no death?" The master replied, "It is right here in the world of birth and death." So you might have heard the terms, you have to walk the pathless path in order to pass through the gateless gate. We are here to arrive at that non-dual understanding beyond being and non-being, to embrace the paradoxical nature of life, to unite together what is seemingly opposite, what exists and what not exists, to recognize there are absolute elements of your existence that imply separation, that if you might think, we're all one, or you might say namaste at the end of class, we are one. But when you stub your toe on the coffee table, that is your pain to feel. We do have an element of separation from others. And at the same time, what you think is you is interdependent. So another story from Shunryu Suzuki. He goes to his students and says, "Don't worry, you are perfect just the way you are." So I'm hearing that from your teacher. It's pretty good news. And then he adds, "And there is room for improvement." And I think we can simultaneously acknowledge both realities. You can be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. You are perfect just the way you are, and there's room for improvement. And we can acknowledge both truths at the same time. So in the Heart Sutra, it is written, "Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness is only form." And if I'm perfectly honest with you, I remember reading that a long time ago, and I went, "Ha!" I put the book on the shelf. And it took a few years of practice and experience, because holding to seemingly contradictory ideas. What do you mean form is emptiness and emptiness is form? These are two completely separate concepts. I simply do not understand what the sutra is trying to say. But I've also noticed in aging, I'm not that old, but in my years When I look back, I'm like, wow, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I really strongly believed in this. If you asked me about this, I would say I'm absolutely this. And now I'm like, actually, now I'm that. So maybe right now, today, you heavily identify with, say, this political party, or this is your spiritual practice, or this is the God that you believe in. It's normal and natural to latch on to those beliefs and views, but of course, those two will change, and we can give space for that change to happen. So let's sit, think about these things to find your meditation posture. And if it's comfortable, you can close your eyes. Let's try the mantra of intimacy. This too, this too. So as you notice anything that's going on in your emotional world, see if you can welcome it. This belongs, and this belongs. Letting go of any resistance and acknowledging, recognizing, as we say, inviting it in for tea. And shifting from emotions to our body. This too. We can notice what we like about our body. Our ears, the sense of sound that can take in beautiful symphonies, the sounds of birds. Our eyes, which can look at the flowers and gaze into a loved one. Our mouth, our sense of taste that can taste delicious things. Your sense of touch that can feel through this world. Can appreciate our legs for how they take us wherever we want to go. Appreciate our hands and fingers for all that they do for us. It all belongs. And so does that which we tend to avoid. Could be anything. Could be the dandruff on your head, the snot in your nose, that sore throat you had a few weeks ago, shortness of breath from going upstairs, or indigestion from eating something funny. Maybe there's pain in our body somewhere, in the hip or knee or back. Can we welcome this too as part of us, knowing everyone and everything belongs? And whether this meditation was a beautiful experience or a boring and scattered one, this too, this too belongs. We can make space for this life of 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. Letting go of what is behind, letting go of what is in front, and letting go of the in between. With a heart that takes hold nowhere, you will arrive at the place beyond suffering. Rest in the unknown, embrace the mystery. This world is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be embraced. Hmm. Thank you for sharing your practice and presence with me today. Namaste.